Would you ever think you'd become a better athlete in your 40s than you were in college? Well, that's exactly what Cynthia did. After 18 years of not running, started training again at 40, and by the age of 43, was running faster than she did in college and became the 2019 world champion at the 400 meter. Join me as I talk to Cynthia Monteleone about how she trains and what she eats to become fast over 40. Thank you for joining me today for another episode of Hunger Hunt Feast. With me is Cynthia Monteleone. Did I say that name right? Monteleone?
That's good, yeah. Or Monteleone. Yeah.
Monteleone? Okay, I'm sorry. I added a little Sicilian on there. All right, Monteleone, author of book Fast Over 40, coach and world champion, women's world champion, 400 meter. Was that 2019?
2019, that's correct. Indoor for that race. Yeah.
Indoor champion. And you're also national champion for that.
Several times, several events. Yes.
Several, like 400, 800, and shot put.
Yes, aloha, first of all.
Aloha.
We're here in Maui. So if anyone hears a rooster, for some reason he's been quiet. He's down in the valley. And we have wild chickens here. If you've ever been to Maui, you know this. And so he's been quiet all morning, but he's decided during this podcast to go ahead and just start chiming. So if you hear that, it's the sounds of Maui.
That's awesome.
So aloha from Maui. And the national championships, I decided a couple of years ago to take up shot put because I figured it's never too late to learn something new, right?
Yeah,
I love it.
So being, I'm going to just say it. It's you look like a 400 meter runner. You definitely could look like 800 meter runner. You don't look like your average shot putter, if you know what I mean.
Well,
you're kind of long and lean for that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, a lot of the shot comes from, power, as you know. We're actually not throwing with our arms like a baseball, but it's actually pushing with our lower body and the kind of the lever action of our lower body.
Right.
So I think a lot of people don't realize that. And so it's really the power that you can get behind it. Man, I know so many shot putters that are super lean, and I like to also promote that throwers don't have to be big.
That's
a lot
awesome.
of shot putters maybe are big, but I like to promote that. And I actually just had a really awesome interview with Maggie Malone, who's one of my clients. She's a world champion. Yes, she is Olympic javelin thrower, national champion. She set the collegiate record, which still stands. And she was saying that when she first got to college, they to Texas A&M, they were like, oh yeah, you're a thrower now, you can eat anything you want. And it didn't serve her well for her performance. And so we got into that. And so I'm really, really trying to break the stigma that, all throwers have to be big.
That's awesome. Yeah, it looks very like you have this Olympic athlete who does not look healthy in some cases,
Right. You wonder about their metabolic health sometimes.
Yeah, you can kind of guess.
They're throwing world records. So you're like, well,
strength and power, but you're sacrificing.
For the moment.
Yeah. And it's fine if you're in college.
I think they can still do it. And that can be lean muscle mass instead of, adipose fat or visceral fat. Like
that's a result of overfeeding, obviously. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which you don't really need with power.
Correct. Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with that. Yeah.
So you've got a great story. I mean, there's a lot of nuance. I mean, you're not just, you're a mother of three. Obviously by the title of the book, Fast Over 40, you're over 40 years old and you're a world champion. And you say in your book, your time is better now than it was when you were a collegiate athlete.
Yes.
So which is really incredible because I could definitely tell you I'm not faster than I was at any point in college. I've everything's slowed down. So that's
normal. So my thing is, okay, How did this happen? Let me investigate. How did this happen, and how can I help others to achieve the same thing, or at least achieve the better superhero version of themselves? So that's awesome. What my mission is.
That's awesome. Well, and you have a very unusual diet for an athlete as well. You're primarily carnivore, correct?
Yes, I'm animal protein based. I'm not strictly carnivore.
Okay.
So I do cycle strict carnivore a couple times a year,
Mm-hmm.
but I do eat berries. I eat nuts. I
Okay.
do eat some vegetables sometimes, but they're not really the main thing on my plate ever. And they're definitely not on my plate for all my meals. Um,
Sure.
and I supplement, but yes. So I guess what's unusual is that I will eat a ribeye usually, or sometimes tenderloin or filet mignon or something, but I eat steak an hour before I race, which is unusual for a runner.
Yeah.
Because for years, nutritionists have said, you got to carb up, right? Pasta
Right.
parties and all this other stuff. And what I've found is that the original research for this carbing up thing to replace the glycogen stores was
Mhm.
actually done in this group of runners, and they didn't train the whole week before their race. So they didn't intake, they actually cut carbohydrates. They didn't intake carbohydrates and they didn't train. And then they all of a sudden, had this influx in carbohydrates to replace the glycogen stores. And people forget that whole part. So they still overtrain the week before. They still eat all the carbohydrates the week before. And then they eat, candy or pasta or,
Mhm.
before I've even seen jars of candy at marathon runs, this sort of thing, like because they're so dependent on sugar for energy. But what that does is just put you on a roller coaster. So
Yes.
I don't want to be on that roller coaster on race day. I want to be even. I want to be feeling my best. I want my nerve health to be supported. So I don't have anxiety, so that I have eustress instead of distress. I talk about that a lot. Like make sure
Mm.
you're controlling your excitement. So you can be excited, but definitely not stressed. So a lot of that comes down to the nutrition. And steak or beef is particularly grass-fed. My favorite's grass-fed. If I don't have grass-fed, definitely I'll just opt for, if I'm in Poland and there's a nice steak restaurant in my hotel, which is where my world championship was, yeah, I'm getting that steak, So in
Gotcha.
Europe, of course, there's another story because all of the quality of food is
Much
definitely
better.
better.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But so yeah, I eat this steak and it's full of B12 and folate, and those things are extremely important for nerve health. So
Right.
sometimes I say, like, I joke that plant-based people or vegans their nerves are frazzled because they're not making enough for their myelin sheaths, right, to
Right.
support their nerves. And there actually is science behind that, but
Absolutely.
it's kind of funny too. But
Yeah.
yeah, so they're like always stressed out and nervous. But yeah, so I I think that's definitely part of my race strategy. Not to mention, beef is full of things like carnitine, carnosine, taurine, all these amazing amino acids that help us in our performance. So for
Sure.
instance, carnosine, a lot of people take the supplement beta alanine it's a precursor to making carnosine. Well, I just go straight for the carnosine in the
Ah.
beef, which I found in research. Remember, I said, okay, I'm going to investigate why this is working. I found out that carnosine is 85% more bioavailable in beef than it is in a supplement. So yeah, maybe they're pounding this beta alanine to make the carnosine, but I'm going straight for the carnosine by eating the steak. And that is giving me a lactic acid buffer. So if you know anything about the
Ah.
400 meters,
Yeah.
the lactic zone is a very important thing to basically get a hold of. So through training, through diet, whatever means possible, because you're in the lactic zone for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the carnosine actually buffers the lactic acid, and not to mention carbohydrates. So if I were to eat a carbohydrate-rich diet, the lactic acid is actually made from carbohydrates. So there is a little bit of science behind not intaking a lot of carbohydrates and not making as much lactic acid that I have to deal with in my race. So that
Right.
gives me a little bit longer strength in my run.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're going to have some as you break down the glycogen, right? It's a byproduct when you're at that level of intensity. Lactic acid is always there. You can probably use some of it, convert some of it to energy, right? Some of the
Right,
lactate can be converted back into as you
right,
train.
right. But
Mitochondria
as
can
it
do that.
right, there's a point where it can't catch up.
There's a
And I
point where it
like to
can't catch up,
prolong that as long as possible.
right? Or build up. So you're saying eating carbs tends to create a greater buildup, even though, so it's not just about the glycogen storage in the muscle, but
Right, correct.
the actual food that you've eaten recently can cause greater lactic acid buildup.
Right. Yes, that's what the research that I studied says. I'm always into, I try to read at least 50 medical journal articles a week. I
Wow.
try to read 4 books. I've been a little bit slack on that this past month because I've been busy doing other things and with my clients, but I'm definitely still on the articles. And so, yeah, I just keep investigating all these different mechanisms. And I'm like, oh my gosh, again, this is why it's working. Here it is
Gotcha.
again. Here's the evidence again. Here's, beef is best again. Like it keeps pointing back to the same patterns. And now I know why my mentor was Charles Poliquin, of
Hmm.
course, one of the greatest. I know why he would recommend certain things. And it was really funny because people would ask him questions and he would think for a minute and then he would just give the answer and they would say, why? And he said, I don't have time to explain that to you. Because it was like he had this encyclopedia of all these medical journal articles in his head. And
Yeah.
he knew, for instance, he said, I said, are ice baths good? And he said, for competition, pre-competition. And he said, yes, 36 hours before competition. And I was like, okay, like
Like
36
he just pulled
hours,
up a database. Like he just Googled it
Yes.
in his
And
head.
so, yeah, and he would just sit and he'd think for a minute and you could see him churning through the article and he was right every time. And so that had to do with like different circadian rhythms of testosterone and cortisol and basically making sure they're balanced. And yeah, so
Wow.
now I understand why he said that, because I'm in the same boat where people will ask me questions and I'll say, okay, it's because, oh my gosh, let me pull up these 50 articles in my head on
Right.
that subject. And the whole pattern of those articles pointed to the same answer. Right. So we were talking about the carbohydrates and basically, the lactic acid buildup, that sort of thing. So
Right. Right. And Charles Poliquin, and being your coach, I know
Charles, right.
he's been
And
he's
asking
been
him in the encyclopedia. That's right. We went to the encyclopedia thing. Yeah.
he's been
Of
coaching
answering
Olympic
the question.
level athletes, world class athletes for decades. So beyond his knowledge of of journals and medical articles, he also has a level of experience that you just can't, trial and error.
Right. With all kinds of people. So
Right.
he
With a
would tell
variety of
stories
people.
about his Olympians, of course, but then he would also have stories about maybe some, big head of a corporation and his wife who used to be a pageant queen and was now 300 pounds and
Mhm.
her hiding candy bars in the couches. And so
Right.
they would hire him to help her, and he'd be like, where are you hiding the candy bars? And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he'd be like, the measurements never lie. So because he developed, of course, the metabolic analysis, it used to be called biosig, and it's where you measure 14 different places of body fat, and the ratio between those places tells you things like hormone balance and liver function, thyroid function, all kinds of stuff. So that's what I'm certified in. But he would, I could relate to that story because I had a wrestler girl once that was sneaking a gallon of ice cream on the weekends, and her
Ooh.
sugar measurement was like would go up, and I'd be like, what's going on? And she'd be like, nothing. And then I ran into the mom of the friend in the grocery store and she said, oh, the girls had so much fun eating their gallon of ice cream when she came over the other night. And I'm like, see, busted, the measurements never lie.
And
So
mobs never lie, right? So
yeah, she didn't know they weren't supposed to be doing it. The wrestler wasn't supposed to be doing it, so it was
oh
really
my
funny.
gosh. That is funny. So
Yeah.
you're coaching people not only for running. Sounds like you have some athletes, some track athletes, but also just general, people who want to change um, their current health situation, right?
Yeah, I get a lot of autoimmune clients.
Mm.
They have autoimmune issues because that is misdiagnosed quite a bit, and it could be so many different things. And so my doctor, actually, my medical doctor, he started sending me his patients because he said, listen, Cynthia, like I'm trained in Western medicine. If
Mm.
it's this, I prescribe this. But if it's a gray area and their blood work looks good, I send them to you. And so I'm like, all right, let's do it. And the reason why is because his wife actually had neuropathy for 8 years
Mm.
and they tried all different things to fix it. And so he said, I think she should talk to you. And then I did talk to her. I put her on she was very strict. She went on my protocol that I gave her specifically individually for her issues. And in 2 weeks, she had no more neuropathy.
No,
So
2 weeks.
6 weeks, she was like completely
Oh, wow.
like on top of the world. Yeah. And so, and it had been 8 years that she said when she stepped out of bed, it was like stepping on needles.
Oh my
And she
gosh.
had shooting pains up her arms every day for 8 years. And I have a lot of theories on why that was happening. She was stuck in an antibiotic cycle, which, being married to a doctor, maybe that was pretty normal, this sort of thing. And so we fixed all the different issues, and I cleaned up her diet, she was not overweight. She was a very, very fit person. But fit, but still eating some junk and processed foods here and there. So we cleaned up everything, and I put her on the supplements that were right for her. And yeah, I mean, it was like, so that, I mean, after that, he definitely just sends people my way all the time.
Wow. I'll
It's
bet.
nice that there's a medical doctor that, and he also says to me, like, listen, your blood work is the best I've ever seen. Hands down, every year I get it done, just, to see what's
Sure.
what. And he says, he says, we cast the net so far, is how he puts it, because I don't just get the standard blood work. I ask for the D, I ask for zinc, I ask for all kinds of stuff.
Sure.
And he said, casting the net this far, especially, I've never seen blood work this good. So whatever you're doing, I endorse. If you're eating red meat 5 to 7 times a week, then I'm endorsing that because it's working. And he said, I absolutely believe that you can eat red meat and be healthy. So you're proof, and he's like, and you're proving it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
that's
I'm with you
separate
there.
from, right. And that's separate from gold medals, right? So what I
Right.
like to see is maybe athletic performance for my Olympians, but also I want to protect them from getting Alzheimer's,
Right.
and that amyloid plaque buildup starts in your 20s. So I'm not trying to overload them with sugar, because I'm telling so many, you don't even know how many Olympians I have that have told me that a nutritionist at one point or another, whether it's in university or afterwards professionally, has told them that they need sugar. Okay, so they're pumping them with Powerade slushies, candy, all kinds of stuff. And I said, well, are they testing your APO alleles to see if you have APO4 and you're more disposed to Alzheimer's and you
Right.
can't process sugar well? And of course they're not. No, they're not. What is that? How do I get that test?
Right.
And several of them actually have that allele. So they are predisposed to not processing sugar well, and they are more likely to have Alzheimer's. And it turns out they do have more Alzheimer's in their family. So yeah, I want them to have the best performance they can have. And I also want them not to get Alzheimer's. And so that's my mission. And it goes hand in hand. They're actually having better performances than ever when they start cutting out the sugar.
Absolutely. Yeah. The APO4 gene actually does, what I understand, what I've read, does better with a hunter-gatherer style diet, where it's just the higher protein, some of the berries, some lean, like veggies, not grains, but veggies. And they tend to be high performers. They tend to be very successful, high performers, whether in their job or physically. They tend to be really high performers, but they need a hunter-gatherer lifestyle, or it catches up with them. And a lot of the time it is in their brain where they see plaques forming and problems with the neuro connections, because they don't have enough, or that because of the sugar throwing off the insulin receptors and causing, just, our brain needs glucose. It doesn't need to be fed glucose through our body creates glucose. Our body can create glucose from protein.
Right. Exactly.
And that's what these nutritionists don't understand. Yeah.
And
they don't
say,
even know it.
That's
they don't forget it. They don't know it.
Oh, you think that's your
they
theory?
Don't even know that they can create. I mean, they don't realize you can create glucose from protein. Your liver, that's the role of your liver, is to regulate your blood sugar, not snacking. Well, believe me, I had this argument.
Have you? Because the only thing I've heard them say,
20 years
sometimes, is that it's not the most efficient way to do it. And I'm thinking, well, if it's internal, like, it sounds pretty efficient to me. But they'll say, oh no, because you have to go through the extra steps. But if you just intake the glucose, then you have that instant energy. So yeah, I love that.
I mean, it's just, think about what your liver doesn't know how to regulate your blood sugar. So you need to have an instant input of glucose. Really. And they say that with a straight face.
Argument that they say. That is totally.
Oh, no, I've had a PhD tell me that. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
They don't,
Yeah. So I get it. I get with weight loss people
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So
And
I
we
get your
have had a
struggle.
couple studies with ketogenic. There's a couple of studies with runners, particularly masters runners, which is my age category, so over 30, well, they've changed it now, but basically over 35. And so they had a study where they fed long distance runners a ketogenic diet for 2 weeks or 10 days or something like this, and found that they had a worse performance. And this is the one that nutritionists love to cite, but that is one study for not a lot of time. And I mean, because it takes a little bit longer than that if you're not used to it
To
sometimes,
adapt.
like sometimes
Right.
not, sometimes yes. And the bottom line is that you shouldn't change your eating pattern before your performance, like that day. So for instance, if you are fat adapted and you're ketogenic, you should not intake an influx of carbohydrates. I have so many research papers, scientific studies that say actually you will do worse in performance if you intake carbohydrates if you're fat and protein adapted. So
Interesting.
it's the same the opposite way. So if you change
Sure.
your style of eating right before a major competition, you may not do that well. So I never advise that. I always say start ahead of time, and build up
Mhm.
to it, that sort of thing. But yeah, there are plenty of other studies like about these gymnasts. There's a great one about gymnasts who, I mean, that's pure power right there. If anyone's using ATP creatine phosphate phase, that's the gymnast. They're not
Right.
running and they're not lactic. They're using their pure power phase. There's a great study out there on gymnasts that lost body fat, and so they got leaner and their performance increased on a ketogenic diet. So not only did their performance not decline and they're a power athlete, but their performance increased. So, I think that
It's amazing. Yeah. Finney and
the
Volek have
debate
done
will
a
go
lot on that.
on, but
So yeah.
the truth is
Finney
in
and
the result.
Yeah. Finney and Volek wrote that book, a ketogenic diet for endurance athletes. Low carb, I can't remember the exact name of the book, but they're two PhDs again, who were athletes in college.
Yeah.
But but it's for long distance, for ultra runners and marathon runners to have
Oh
a
yeah.
ketogenic
They
diet.
really need a ketogenic diet.
Fat,
If anyone
fat
needs
adapted.
that, it's the
Yeah.
endurance. Yeah. And I
Right.
was a guest on Zach Bitter's podcast. I don't know if you know who Zach Bitter is. Yeah.
Yes.
100, I think he has the world record in the 100-mile run and also the 13-hour track run. And so we talked, and we'll get into it. We talked about how sprinting is better for aging than distance running, and and how actually, and this I write about this in my book, that when you sprint as opposed to do endurance training, you have a 20% greater learning curve after, because of your BDNF, which is your brain-derived neurotropic factor. It's like a little protein that fertilizes our brain, in case anybody doesn't know that. And so your BDNF increases, and the learning was 20% greater for sprinters as opposed to endurance athletes. So I told them, sprinters are smarter. Got to get on the sprinting train. But he actually agreed.
I like that too.
He agreed. He said he won't do this forever, is what he ended up saying. So
I think that's a sport where age really can't catch up with you, with joints and
oxidative stress,
cartilage, stress on the heart.
Gut,
I definitely incorporated more
distress.
sprinting in my routines after 40. It was like you start slowing down. You just start getting too efficient with your movements, and so to speak, or you do, and if you're in the gym all the time, that's usually slow, controlled movement. And
well, if you're doing it right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and but we don't.
It's great to hear you say that, because I see so many people just not doing that. I'll just say
They slow
and if
down.
you studied anything about Charles, about when you're concentrating on the eccentric, not only especially as you age, not only are you you're slowing things down, so you're less likely to get injured from a big burst movement, but you're also recruiting more muscle fibers. So
absolutely.
as a strength coach, that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's how you should train for weight training. But we need time, like you mentioned, with hormonally, I think for our nervous system to have explosive movements, to have something with either some level of plyometric, some sort of interval training, some sort of short rather than long steady state. I think there's a place for that, as long as you can keep your joints safe if you want to do that. And some people can't do the burst, but if you're physically capable, some level of sprinting or interval work where you're burning out anywhere from 30 seconds to 2 minutes and you've topped out, but you're moving, you're going to improve your mobility, your energy level, like you said, the brain health to your nervous system, because it stimulates your entire nervous system connects to your brain. I mean, it's all stimulating.
Right. So what the research studies have said is that if you're having that burst of energy that, the plyometrics, like you said, are hit, or sprinting especially, if you have that burst and then you rest, and then you burst and then you rest, it's your brain is sending all those really great cytokines, myokines, to heal everything and to heal that inflammation and make you stronger. But if you do it too long, steady state, it becomes overwhelmed, your HPA axis, everything. And then you can't, it's almost like you give up, your body gives up, your nervous system gives up, everything gives up. And so that's why they found that short burst and rest will send those helpers to help heal you. But then if it's too much, they can't keep up, and it's too much. And so and a lot of people take vitamin C and different types of antioxidants in order to, help your internal glutathione, so your internal antioxidant system. And that does help alleviate the oxidative stress from long state cardio, but what they found is there's no amount of that you can intake that will actually catch up to the amount of oxidative stress that you're creating by doing long steady state cardio.
Right. Especially chronically, like over a week after.
Chronically,
it's like chronic, it's like chronic injury that you never completely heal from. So you've got inflammation, a lot of higher cortisol levels and
higher cortisol. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that messes with your hormones. So then what happens? If you look at any of the research, men have lower testosterone. Yes, women, their hormone balance is off. They start having irregular cycles. If they're still having cycles, so the whole hormone system gets thrown off from this, which is why. So my coach was so funny the other day. He's like, well, you can't tell people that love to do distance that they can't do distance running. And I said, listen, I am not telling anybody. If you love to run long distance, if you love endurance training, then do it. I'm not telling you not to do it. But I'm telling you, if someone asks me, what's the best way for anti-aging? What's the best thing for my brain health? What's the best thing for me long term? I'm going to tell you it's sprinting.
Right.
So I'm not trying to change anybody that doesn't want to hear it or doesn't want to change. But if you ask me, I'll give you the answer. And it's because of all this research I've done, not to mention just using me as an example myself.
Well, and I think that's where exactly what you just said. Where we need to start is with us. In an N of one. In a research, they have the N of how many participants. And starts with an N of one, and we cannot just relegate all knowledge to academia, to a study, because those are so often there's already a predetermined outcome in many cases. Especially if they get into epidemiology, they're looking for their outcome, and then they gear the research to find it. Right. We can find research that correlates or resonates with our personal experience, and then go deeper and say, okay, what else can we find that matches a personal? But if you're not matching it with personal experience, you're just looking at words on paper. Honestly, in my opinion, I mean, you can look for, but it's got to come down to, does this work clinically? Yes. Does it work practically? Results. Yeah, with yourself, with clients, does this actually play out in real life, or does this look good in their little research project?
Right.
And to get the funding from whoever wanted it.
It's not right. It's not popular to sprint. Nobody wants to sprint over the age of 40. I won't say nobody, but I'll just say it's very trendy after you turn 40, especially for women, that you start training for a marathon, right?
Oh yeah.
How many people have you heard of doing that? So it's not
multiple. They have one here in Nashville, and it's like everybody starts running all of a sudden, a month before. It's like, you're in for it.
And if that gets them up off the couch, awesome. But if they're asking me what's the best way, I'm going to say sprinting. Yeah.
Well, and then you're eating red meat, which also goes against everything we're hearing now. And I'm with you. I probably have red meat every day. Definitely try to have liver every day. From a cow beef liver, you've got more deer on Maui than you have people. Right?
Yeah, we definitely have an influx of axis deer. Yeah, we have venison quite a bit. Yeah. We always have somebody who we know that's hunting and bringing us, we do more fishing. Sometimes we trade them with some fish, but
gotcha.
But I'm a big fan of the local company, Maui Cattle Company. I'm not affiliated with them at all. I'm just a huge fan. I like to be supportive of them because they're owned by a company called Mahi Pono. And Mahipono has taken the old sugarcane lands, which have stripped the soil. So, like just they're totally bare of nutrients. And so the sugarcane industry moved out. Mahipono bought up this land. They're now rebuilding the soil with regenerative agriculture.
Awesome.
They're grazing the cattle on some of it, which helps us. We have wildfires every year, so that helps us with our wildfire situation.
Yeah.
I'm just a huge fan because it's so good for our island. And then here I am, my son comes to me and says, Mom, the librarian at my school on Zoom today said, we should all do a little bit better not to eat meat. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me right now? So I wrote a scathing email to the school, to the librarian, to his teacher. His teacher was very nice. She responded back and she said, I remember you educating me about this at the beginning of the year, and I'm very appreciative. Thank you so much. Hopefully they'll be open to your education as well. But I thought, what business does a librarian have telling our children? And it was the whole school. The Zoom went out to the whole school on Earth Day, telling our children not to eat meat, when the data shows that the most malnourished children are the ones that don't have access to meat in the world.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, and then of course she obviously didn't have a clue about how great the regenerative agriculture is on our island through Maui Cattle Company, So I definitely sent some studies,
gotcha,
sent some research and all that stuff, and said it was a very dangerous comment to make.
Yeah, it is a very dangerous comment. Yeah, and monocropping of all types of grains through our Midwest, that's just destroying our soil. And I remember being out in Maui, they were getting rid of all the sugar plant. When I was there, they were burning several of them. They were just wiping them out or letting them go. And I didn't know what was. I figured they were going to build condos or something. I didn't realize that a cattle.
No, that's how they harvest it. They burn it. They burn the fields after they harvest. So they were burning all the time, and people were complaining about the smoke.
Sure.
Then what happened was, then the lands were empty, and then there were an influx of wildfires, and there was even more smoke for those people. So
oh wow.
Yeah, but luckily Mahipono came in, and they're planting several different citrus crops and different things on all the different lands, and they have shown already that the soil is bouncing back. It's being rebuilt. So that's really awesome. Exciting for our island. Yeah,
it is such a beautiful place. Well, we can't.
Not to mention for Earth Day, like the transportation costs of shipping avocados from Mexico, or grains, or almonds, like just the whole, how much water almonds takes. It's actually more what they call blue water versus green water, more blue water than beef. So the argument never holds up.
No.
Yeah.
No, yeah, beef will get it from rain. That's really all they need, and then the grass. But yeah, water. Almonds need a lot of irrigation for sure. So it's not. I don't want to overlook the fact that you have not been this stellar athlete ever since college. So you kind of had a comeback. I mean, you've basically transformed yourself. So, I mean, I saw the before and after picture. So at 40, are you 44?
I'm 45 now. Yeah.
45 now. So it's incredible. Incredible. So you got your championship at 43. So at age 40, so you're 45 now. At 43, you won the championship, but at age 40, you were not in competition shape.
No, I was about 20 pounds heavier. I had just, my son was 2. I had just finished breastfeeding him. So I always tell people, like, hey, while you're, pregnant breastfeeding, you're not trying to lose body fat. Definitely never do that. You have that body fat for a reason. So I was holding that extra body fat, but I was done feeding. So I was ready to, get back into shape. And my daughter said to me, Mom, I want to run the 400 in college like you did. Can you start training me? She was 11. And so I said, okay, well, let's go up to the track. And so we went up to the track and we did this very slow 400 meters, although we were running as fast as we could. And it was about 1 minute and 30 seconds. We ran 200 and then just died for the second 200, crawled across the finish line. And yeah, it was wonderful. So we started training, and basically a lot of people, I made some mistakes in the beginning. I tried too much too fast. I pulled my quad muscles. I had to sit out for 6 weeks. The first month I trained, I would say. So I learned my lesson. I learned what to teach others as well. Yeah. And so I just kept showing up. So a lot of people say, like, what's the biggest change that you made? And I said, well, you know what? I just kept showing up. I showed up 3 times a week to train for running. And then in 2018, I got a really great strength coach who was one of my mentor Charles's top students, Malcolm William. He's Source Performance in Arizona. And so he has been strength coaching me ever since, even though I'm a strength coach as well. And I write strength programs for clients and athletes. But he, it's always nice to have a separate coach and not coach yourself.
Absolutely.
And he is really amazing. So I think that just the whole thing is part of the transformation. And that's what I try to share with others. Like I try in my book, Malcolm's in there. Also Preston Green, who's my mentor now. He's the strength and conditioning coach for the Florida Gators. And ESPN and Sports Illustrated called him one of the best strength coaches in the country. Just really, really amazing talent. And so I have all these different, Ronnie Inserta, John McDowell, these top of the line strength coaches in the book so that you can get started. And I do stress, start slow to be fast, right? Start walking up a hill. If you have never sprinted before, don't just go out there and sprint. I did that. I made that mistake. It was not good. And so I came back slowly. But the main thing is that I kept showing up. I kept doing it. I kept showing up for practice. If it was raining, if it was hot, whatever. I tried not to make any excuses. I tried to show up every single time. So even when I remember one time before I got my nutrition totally dialed in, I was under the weather. I was not feeling well. I felt like kind of feverish or something. And my coach made me run a basically race pace 400, but a 500. So I had to run through the 400 at race pace and keep going another extra 100 meters. And I did it. And I couldn't believe that I did it. And I was like, wow, I hit my time. I was sub 60, still kept going, hit my time on the 500, ran that almost as fast as I ran in college. And I was like, how did I even do that? I was like on the ground afterwards, of course. And then I ran a couple more reps after that too, after resting. But I guess the main thing is that we're capable of more than we think we're capable of. And I really like to promote that to other people. Like you might think that you can only do this much, but you can actually do this much. And so, and not in an overtraining kind of way, like the rest and recovery, especially as we age, is extremely important. So they say, oh, do you run every day? No, I don't run every day. I run 3 times a week. I make sure I take at least 2 to 3 days where I'm doing nothing. I'm not running. I'm not strength training. I'm not overworking myself at home or that sort of thing. I'm trying to rest actively. And and so, but by doing that, I was able to show up to my races and my competitions and think, oh, well, you know what? I already hit that time that I'm trying to hit in practice when I didn't feel well, and I ran an extra 100 meters. So of course I can run this. So it gives you a type of confidence. And I love the title of your podcast because it's like you have that hunger, like I have that hunger to get that championship or that medal. And then I'm hunting for it by showing up every day. Exactly. And then I'm feasting when I'm standing on the podium. So it's like 100%. The perfect analogy, but can be anything in life really, like you said. But that is what's motivating me. So I like to share this quest with others because I believe that everyone, now maybe not everyone can run as fast as the best Olympian. Like I can't, I certainly can't. I was not the fastest in the country when I was in college, but I did run faster in that race than I did in college, which is not supposed to happen. So I'm becoming a better superhero version warrior of myself as I age. I just actually ran a race last weekend. I ran a 200 and I ran 100 and I ran faster than my best ever master's time. So that's also not supposed to happen. You're supposed to get slower as you get older. And then my 200 time, I ran within one tenth of a second of my best time over 40. So so instead of being half a second slower or something like that, because I'm in a different age group now, I'm still hanging in there, and I think I can go even faster. I'm feeling like I can go even faster.
Wow. So, and you weren't training after college, right? I mean, you weren't training like this.
Not for 20 years. I did not run once. I maybe jogged with friends a couple times.
That's amazing. That right there is amazing. That you came back and restarted in your 40s. What was your diet like through those mom years and those years where you're...
Before I knew about Charles, it was a mess. I thought everyone had, like stomach aches after they ate, and just random health issues here and there. It just seemed like that was the normal thing. And then I started learning from one of his students, and I realized, oh my gosh, this is not normal. Started changing my diet, studying everything Charles had to say, started taking classes. I'm also lucky that he kind of took me under his wing, and he answered every single question I had, even if they were dumb. What I considered dumb questions, like now. Oh my God, I can't believe I asked him that. He's super patient with me, and just really, helped me with anything I needed. And so I was very lucky with that. But yeah, my diet was not great. I ate McDonald's sometimes, I ate processed food sometimes. I had no knowledge of what to eat. And then when I started learning, I immediately responded. Like my body fat got better, this and that, like just really great. And when I was carrying my weight after my children, it was mostly, I'd say, sugar weight, because we owned a bakery at the time.
Oh,
We owned a
wow.
gluten-free organic bakery. And so I was always having to test the frostings and different things. And
Yeah.
a little bit here and there adds up all day. And while we were trying to do a really great thing for our celiac customers and things like that, it was really having a negative impact on our health, I would say. And I say our because my husband also had gained so much weight during that time. So he was up to like 280, and you probably saw his before and after, and then went down, and just one day he was like, okay, I'm ready. Let's do this. Do whatever the analysis says, like put me on all the supplements. I'll do all the eating plan. And he did it. And he was down to 210 in 8 months. So
Oh my gosh.
just from doing the eating and the supplements.
That's
And
amazing.
he doesn't exercise. He didn't exercise any differently, we'll just say.
Gotcha.
He coaches wrestling, so he was still active,
Okay.
but he didn't, not on a strict regimen or anything like that.
Gotcha.
So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Well, that's amazing. So you got your whole family transformed and eating basically a animal-based, low carb
Yes.
diet, basically.
Yep.
Yeah.
Even the kids. Yeah. The
Oh,
kids
that's
eat,
awesome.
yeah, the kids eat meat and nuts breakfast. They don't eat cereal. We're
That's great.
anti-cereal in our family. So they don't eat cereal at all. Not even the gluten-free kind or the, grain-free kind or whatever. I just don't even want to promote. They used to sometimes when they're younger, but I just don't even want to promote that now that they're 7 and 8, the younger ones. My daughter's no problem. She's 16, but I just don't even want to introduce that to them. And so they're happy with their meat and nuts breakfast. They have meat, nuts, and berries. And it helps them to be sharp in their learning. They're hammers, they're in jujitsu, and they're super strong and athletic,
Wow.
happy. They're happy kids. So I feel like this is my mission extends to, yes, my family and to everyone else's family. I'm trying to get the message out to everyone that this is possible.
Absolutely. That's great. Well, how do people find you? I know I found you on Instagram. It's at fastover40, correct?
Yes, correct. Yes.
Number
I also
40.
have a web. Yes, the number 40. Yeah. So I'm active on Instagram. I try to post a little bit more these days. And I just started a warrior community on my website. So you can sign up for 6 months, it's 6 months at a time. And basically I'm offering like recipes and my training logs. So you get to see what I'm doing in there, a long podcast, some short podcasts where I just talk about my thoughts about different things, sprint workouts, all kinds of fun stuff. So that's on my website, mam808.com or mam808.org, either one.
Okay.
And yeah, so that's my new venture because I ran out of time for clients. I was like so busy with my Olympians and my other clients, and I don't have time right now to take on new clients. So this was my way of getting my mission out to a lot of people at the same time. Yeah.
Gotcha. I did see you had one of your I had asked you about the dynamic warm up is on your YouTube channel. So I know you're on YouTube as well. Is that just look for Mam 808 or your name?
It's kind of a long name, Metabolic Analytics of Maui, Cynthia Monteleone. So
okay. I'll link to it in the show
probably
notes.
if you put anything in there, it'll come up.
Okay. I'll link to it in the show notes. I'm going to link to all these in the show notes.
Awesome.
So you're at fastover40 on Instagram, mam 808.org or .com.
Yes, I like to say 808 because sometimes people actually put an O in, even though
right.
in Hawaii we say we're the 808 because it's our area code. But yeah.
Oh, gotcha. So 808, ma'am, 808.
Uh-huh.
And then on YouTube, I'm going to link out to that YouTube so people can find it. But that dynamic warm up is great. It's kind of a good way to start, because we are, for anyone, really, any athlete's going to have a warm up. But to go out, like you said, to go out and just start sprinting, especially if you're over 40, you're likely to pull something. So you need to warm up, you need to ease into it for sure. And I like some of those movements because my hips, I've noticed that just through my 40s, they start tightening up from lifting.
Especially if you strength train quite a bit.
Yeah.
You need that little bit of mobility, but not too much mobility where you're not keeping that elastic pop. So that's where I like that, the different movements in the warm up, because you're keeping your elasticity. You're not static stretching everything too thin. But you're also getting some mobility with some of the yoga and the hip circles and things like that, that help you if you do a lot of strength training and you might be stiff in those areas.
Yeah, that's definitely me. So I just need to do it in general for my own maintenance, but definitely before running. But I was playing with some of those movements. It's a little rainy here. I've been able to get out and play much.
I think the dynamic warm up is an excellent starting place for people who have never sprinted, just doing that as the workout.
For sure.
Because there's some squats in it. There's some jump squats, lunges. So I always say, if you're totally beginning, you could even just do that as your beginning workout.
For sure. And their heart rate would be up and they'd have their blood moving and be plenty and you're hitting compound movements in most cases, but you're getting the ones, the places where we tend to injure ourselves as well if we're cold. But like you said, this is warm up with not stretching, but movement. So you're waking up the nerves as well as getting blood flow. So it's an awesome contribution there. So I'm going to link, we'll link to that. And that's on the YouTube channel as well. Cynthia, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I feel like we could talk all day. We are totally on the same page about so many different things.
For sure. Absolutely. I love it.
Thank you for having me as your guest. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. I'll like I said, I'm going to link out to all these things, as well as how to find your book on maybe your I guess
I have it on my website with a signed copy, or you can buy it on Amazon as well.
Awesome. We'll link out to that. Great. Thanks so much, Cynthia.
Okay, mahalo. Aloha.
Bye.